how much is that?
She said, forget it. There's too much going on.
Nobody noticed.
There's too much going on. No, we didn't.
He ended up seeing those.
She's talking about you. She said she loves you. She said she loves you. Love it. Love him. She va un'enghi chi desco Jill. Jill and Nelly. Okay. Okay, let's go.
She's my baby.
Yeah. She makes all these beautiful cakes. Lara made it. Lara made it. Lara does a good job. Yeah, the boy. Lara is very good. She got to. Come on.
Sound bread.
And no, Gina's gonna have banana bread. Oh, I thought it was carrot cake, but it's not.
guys. Come on. You need to hurry up, guys. Yes, it's not showing. No slideshow. Now let's see if it's on.
Well, sitting on a bunch of cords.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, good. It seems.
So maybe we need to. We can just take it off. Hello. If everyone can please take your seats. Hello, my name is Haigan Nalbandian. I am the of this year's San Diego Armenian Genocide commemoration. Okay. And standing beside me is my co-chair, Sarkis Armenian.
Hi everyone. We welcome you all to our annual San Diego Armenian Genocide commemoration event.
Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping announcements to make. We kindly ask that no food be brought inside the church. Please also take a moment to silence your phones. I am cutting out a little bit. It's cutting out. This event is being live recorded and will be posted on St. Sarkis Church's YouTube channel. Thank you for your cooperation.
Each year, Armenian organizations across San Diego come together to create this event with a shared purpose: to remember, to honor, and to ensure that those we lost in the Armenian Genocide are never forgotten.
We would like to begin this afternoon by recognizing the organizers and helped fund this event. Including the ACYO, Parish Council, Ladies Society, and Armenian Sunday School. Armenian National Committee of America, San Diego. Armenian Revolutionary Federation, Rupen Chapter.
Armenian Relief Society, Rubina Chapter.
Armenian Students Association, UC San Diego.
Homenetmen, Sevan Chapter.
Knights and Daughters of Vartan, Gomidas and Talat Chapters.
And Trek San Diego Chapter.
Thank you to each of these organizations' support and commitment to this event.
At this time, it is our honor to introduce our Master of Ceremonies, Lisa Grajian, who will guide us through today's program. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Haigan and Sarah. I also welcome all of you and those watching on YouTube to the San Diego Joint Armenian Genocide commemoration on the 111th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. We will be hearing musical performances and also remarks from one of the great genocide scholars of our time, Dr. Taner Akjam, as well as questions from our youth and our community for him to answer. I also acknowledge our special guests today, the Honorable Judge Sharon Kalamkarian of the San Diego Superior Court, David Ojakian, Western Region Director of the Armenian Assembly, walking in. And we will hear from him later outside at the Genocide Monument for key advocacy updates after the program here. I'd also like to welcome our guest clergy, the Reverend Ray Jordan, Senior Pastor of Corona Del Mar Community Church, United Church of Christ, Father Jay Bonanal, pastor at the San Rafael Parish Catholic Church in Rancho Bernardo, and Father James Babcock, formerly of the St. Jacob Melkite Greek Catholic Church, San Diego, and a frequent visitor and home away from home at St. Sarkis. Welcome, Father James. We also welcome Baret Lepedjian, whose remarkable collection of Armenian genocide photographs, originals, are on display in the narthex for you to see. Thank you, Baret, and thank you for coming. I now invite the parish priest of St. Sarkis Armenian Church, the Very Reverend Father Pakrad Berjekian, to lead us in an opening invocation.
Thank you. Please stand up. Օրնյալ Տեր մեր Հիսուս Քրիստոս ամեն Հայր մեր, որ հերգինս ես Սուրբ Եղիցի անուն քո, եկեսե արքայություն քո, եղիցին գամ քո, որպես հերգինս եւ հերգրի ըզհաց մեր հանաբազոր դուր մեզ այսօր եւ թող մեզ սպարտիս մեր, որպես եւ մեկ թողունք մերոց պարտաբանած եւ մի տանիրս մեզի փորձություն այլ բրգյաս մեզի ճարե զիքո է արքայություն եզորություն եւ փառք հավիտյանս հավիտենից ամեն Սկորձս ցերած մերոց ուղի գարա իմես դեր եւ սկորձս ցերած մերոց հաճողյա իմես ամեն
Thank you, Harsorb. Please welcome now the flag processional of the Hominid Men San Diego Scouts, which will be followed by the American and Armenian national anthems performed by the Scouts and members of St. Sarkis Armenian Sunday School. They will also be joined by members of our ACYO youth group. And now the national anthems.
Through the perilous skies, o'er the
Thank you to all our children, our future. Thank you also to Scout Leader Maral Semerjian and Superintendent Tatiana Kevor-Carlson for leading our children. For our first of 3 musical performances this afternoon, please welcome Anthony Gurunian on piano and Tros Akayan on violin, performing the great Armenian priest and composer Gomidas with his beloved song Ziranizad, the Apricot Tree. Thank you, Anthony and Tro. It's beautiful. Please now welcome St. Sarkis Choir Director Sona Bagdasarian on vocals and Anthony Garunian again on piano as Sona sings Gomidas's Grunk, the crane, an Armenian symbol of peace. Thank you, Sana. Thank you, Anthony. So powerful for us all to hear. This year, the 111th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide finds us at a crossroads in many ways. Geopolitically, with the peace agreement with Azerbaijan and the Trip Corridor, while attacks still occur and Artsakh prisoners remain unreleased in Baku. In leadership, with the unrest in Armenia between its questionable government and church leadership. Economically, with the growth in Armenia's tech sector and international investment in AI, while the country still struggles to defend its landlocked existence. And strategically, with Armenia always trying to find trustworthy world partners to help make sure its identity and history are not erased, as Azerbaijan is still trying to do with the destruction of churches and sacred monuments, the attempted rewriting of history, and the renaming of regions. The Spanish-American philosopher George Santayana has a famous quote that is often paraphrased in various ways. But the original quote is, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Now, we as Armenians are pretty good at remembering. We do it all the time. We're always saying, never forget. But we need to take it a step farther and never stop taking action, never stop telling the truth, never stop sharing our story, no matter what it costs us, as we continue living and speaking with unshakable faith in a victorious God. There are few who understand this crossroads that Armenia faces and its historical context with Turkey and Azerbaijan better than our courageous and renowned guest speaker, who will be sharing with us about the great crime of the Armenian Genocide and a century of Turkish denialism. Dr. Taner Akçam is the oh yes, please. No. Yeah. And now his biography. Dr. Taner Akçam is the inaugural director of the Armenian Genocide Research Program at the Promise Institute at UCLA. Before joining UCLA, he held the Kaluzidian and Mugar Endowed Chair in Armenian Genocide Studies at Clark University in Massachusetts. Dr. Akçam is widely recognized as one of the first Turkish scholars to write extensively on the Ottoman Turkish genocide of the Armenians. He has published widely on the Armenian genocide, Turkish nationalism, and denialism. He is the author of more than 15 books translated into multiple languages. His best-known titles include A Shameful Act, The Young Turks' Crime Against Humanity, Killing Orders, and 100 Years of Apartheid in Turkish and Armenian. He is also the founder of the Krikor Gagarin Archive, a major online repository of genocide-related documents. It is now our collective high honor to welcome now for his remarks, Dr. Taner Akçam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this invitation. It is really a great pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to speak on the Turkish denialism of Armenian genocide. In this lecture, I will offer some actually unusual theoretical reflections how genocide and denial has been formed and how denialism should be understood. Drawing on these arguments, I will use the Armenian genocide as a central case to shed light on the nature of the denial. I hope you can see my slide there. I cannot see from here. And when we discuss actually denialism, we usually encounter a set of familiar arguments. And you also expect now from me to talk about these arguments, which I'm not going to do. These arguments, what might be called the standard discursive patterns of denial. Whenever this topic arises, these claims appears almost automatically, forming a kind of ready-made rhetorics. that there was no genocidal intent, that the group in question was not targeted because of their identity, religion, or ethnicity. That what occurred was merely the suppression of an armed rebellion, like the Hamas or like the Armenians in Turkey. And also that the states, Turkey, have a sovereign right to defend themselves and respond to an existential threat. Armenians were existential threat for the Ottoman Empire. This was one of the central claims. And that the use of force was an act of self-defense, that the Turks actually defend themselves against the Russian aggressors and Armenians who went along with Russians. These are standard arguments you will hear again and again, or the numbers are exaggerated, 1.5 million. Even there were not so much Armenians living in Ottoman Empire. According to Ottoman statistic, the number of Armenians, 1.3 million, and so on. So you will experience all these back and forth throughout all these denialism debates. But I'm not going to discuss with you today these arguments. And I'm not really debating the validity of these arguments. Some of them are true in Turkish denialism, of course, and we will encounter automatically this kind of thing. But I want to go more deeper. I want to show you the mentality behind this denialism. What is mainly the structure? What structure do we have there that produce denialism? So I have here 5 major arguments for you that I'm going to introduce in a very brief way. First one is, denialism is a very modern phenomenon. It was not in human history. It's really around 200 or 300 years regarding the mass atrocities, not all other topics, of course. And the second is, truth and denialism are not opposite. You all think that there is a truth, and there are some others that denies this truth. I will show you that the issue is actually not so simple. Denialism has its own truth also. I try to make the issue more complicated for you, so this is my job. And the third, denialism is a structure, and we fail to recognize it as such. So, the failure, why we don't understand denialism, that it's a structure, I think the main reason is what I'm going to tell you, that there is a twofold compartmentalization in our denk structure, in our thought structure. One is temporal compartmentalization. We make a distinction between past and present. And second set of compartmentalization is between ethical judgment and actual political development. And based on these two ways of compartmentalization, this two of compartmentalization, they detach both historical process and moral evaluation from existing political structures. So they obscure the continuing operation of denialism. I will give you how this works, this complicated mechanism. And the fourth, nation states, emergence of nation states, it entails the denialism. The construction of founding narratives, how you create American history, Turkish history, Turkish nation's history, it automatically includes exclusion, silencing, and distortion of the past. I'll give you some examples of it. And then, as a result of all these, my argument is denialism is intrinsic to genocide. It is not a post hoc reaction, but an integral part of genocidal process. This is all about. So, the first argument, denialism is a modern phenomenon. Attempts by state actors to hide mass killings and other atrocities are relatively modern phenomena. In earlier times, in ancient period, state violence, even in mass scale, was not only viewed as normal, but often praised. Far from concealing, the kings, sultans, and the emperors commemorated such violence with pride in the monuments they erected and inscriptions they left behind. They built awe-inspiring monuments to commemorate their victories over their enemies, which often involved the wholesale physical destruction of those enemies. I have here some examples from these monuments. For example, the Assyrian king developed a monument, erected a monument on it. It is written, "I cut their throats like sheep." And then another king writes, "I tore out the tongues of those whose slanderous mouth uttered blasphemies against my God Ashur." And it says, "I fed their corpse, cut into small pieces to dogs and pigs." Another one writes proudly, "I fixed up a pile of corpses in front of the city gate. I flayed the nobles, as many had rebelled, and spread their skins out of the piles. I flayed many within my land and spread their skins out of the walls." So you can find this kind of inscription. Then this has changed. Actually, it was French Revolution, but mainly what we call it Enlightenments. And with the Enlightenments, there is a new understanding emerged. Violence then was something that is not normal. Violence needs an explanation because it is something abnormal, and we have to explain why we had to use the violence. And the justification is not enough all the time, and we use, of course, denial as the way of the violence justification. So denialism constitutes the modern grammar of violence. And this is the important change with the modern time. And how it works in Armenian genocide, for example, it became because government cannot openly praise the violence that they used against Armenians, and they developed a special language, denialism, that includes the cover-up the violence. The first legal law that Ottoman government released, it was 27 May 1915, and according to which it was only a legal relocation of people. The entire genocidal process was organized relocating people legally from one place to another. And it is, according to international law today, it is the right of every state under certain circumstances to relocate their own people from one place to another. Of course, they also pay attention to the international human rights and so on. So according to Ottoman authorities, and the archives are full of these materials, what they did was only relocate a group of Armenians during 4 years because of the security reasons. And archives are full of these materials. And to your information, the term Armenians never show up in these documents. It's not there. It is only a legitimate act of state. And then, of course, in order to justify this, you need to develop an institutional structure. What they did within Interior Ministry, within Foreign Ministry, within War Ministry, they established special institutions. It is not so some days Talat wake up and said that I have to develop a language to deny this. No, they established institutions. Within Interior Ministry, you have the Ottoman language of these Even late 1913, then the job of this institution that they created within Interior Ministry was to observe Armenian activities in and outside Turkey. So if you establish such an institution, then this institution necessitates to corroborate with foreign ministry, because Interior Ministry cannot control and observe the activities of Armenians outside Turkey. So they established a special bureau within Foreign Ministry. And the job of Foreign Ministry was to observe, collect all kind of materials related to Armenians' activity and send that to Interior Ministry. And the War Ministry, because it was during the war years, then they developed a special unit within the War Ministry to compile the materials and to change. And what you see here on the slide, two books that published early 1916. Can you imagine? They organized killing Armenians. The mass killings started mostly towards the second half of May and the June, July. And already 1916, early months, they were able to publish in French, in German, in English language, the brochures about these legal relocation attempts, and of course, Armenians uprising and militant Armenians. They put all kind of weapons and so on that they took away from Armenians. Think about it. You need to establish an institution which they did. So, they created their own truth because. Now, you all believe that truth and denialism are the opposite things. And we all believe, I mean, it's not only you, everybody thinks that there are facts, there are opinions, and interpretation. They are separate things from each other. Truth, you believe, rests on factual facts, and then denialism operates in a way that it denies the factual truth. No, it's not how it works. In order to understand, denialism has its own facts, and denialism has its own truths. It is not a joke. In order to understand this, you have to make a distinction between two kinds of truth. Rational truth, factual truth. Rational truth, for example, in science. The Newton's rule that every apple if you drop fails. If Newton could not discover this, somebody else would have discovered this. Or philosophical truth. Platon's theories. If it hadn't been Plato, somebody else would have discovered this. And you can bury this kind of truth, but some other scholar or scientific individual would come up and discover all these again. So you cannot kill the truth, the rational truth. But what about factual truth that we are talking on Armenian genocide? What is factual truth? Factual truths are documents, victim testimonies, survivors' testimonies, official documents related to it, and some reminiscence buildings and so on. What about if you destroy all these? So it's very simple. If a factual truth is not recorded, then there is no factual truth. You can replace factual truth with your production of materials, and you have your own truth. Then it turns out, in case of Armenian genocide, fight against denialism is not between the truth that you have and the lies, just the opposite. Your truth, factual truth, against the other factual truths. And it is not only simple, discover something that is hidden somewhere. It is a political fight. You have to keep in mind, you cannot defeat denialism with archival materials. Denialism is a political fight, and you have to win this political fight. There is no other way around. So, how do you do that? You destroy the documents. Coincidentally, how you really destroy the truth about Armenian genocide? First, you have to, there are factual truth out there. These are, let's say, official documents. What you do? You destroy them. Coincidentally, we discover in Ottoman archives 3 documents. I don't know why they kept it there. It shows how complicated the issue is. These are 3 telegrams from Talat Pasha sent to regents, governors, and say, destroy these documents after reading them. Here you go. If these hadn't been in the archive, I couldn't show that they really destroy their materials. This is how denialism works. So, how the compartmentalization work? We mostly think that denialism is a moral, structural, moral attitude. You know, there was something bad in the past, and we can really convince others that it really happened to Armenians. But it is not, unfortunately, the case. Because denialism is comparable, actually, with an apartheid regime. It has its own structure. It produces the same mentality. Whatever happened in 1915 can be produced in today's Turkey. But what we do, we compartmentalize past and present, and we think 1915, something happened in the past, and it has no connotations, no relations with today's political structure in Turkey. And the other one, we think, you hear from American politicians a lot in United States, it is the argument, there is a genocide, yes, we know, but because of national interest of United States, it is better not to talk about it. We have vested interest with Turkey, and United States national interest compels us not to talk on genocide. What we do here, we compartmentalize moral attitude, ethical attitude from the real political development. What we don't see by this compartmentalization, actually, the system continues its working. Turkish denialism continues working as a structure. What I mean with all this, just an example here, I want to shorten all this. We have a National Security Council, NSC. This is the highest constitutional organ in Turkey. And this is like the Trump administration has also a National Council, Security Council. Debates and discusses national security problems of the country and makes decisions. This institution in Turkey, National Security Institution, decides Turkey's policy towards Armenia today, Turkey's relation with Azerbaijan, Turkey's policy with Syria. And this institution has a sub-branch within itself, and it says also to combat so-called Armenian genocide claims. It is the same institution that fights genocide denial or genocide are claims of genocide. It is same institution produce the policies of Syria. So you cannot distinguish past and present policies. It is like the apartheid regime I told you. The same regime produced the Armenian genocide in the past, same regime produces the same policy towards Armenians, Kurds in Turkey today. So as long as you don't change the institution, as long as you don't change the apartheid structure, you cannot fight denialism. There is a continuity between from past and today. And this is the American experience that we experience. We hear all the time, yes, it is genocide, but we don't want to jeopardize our relations with Turkey, and realpolitik is different than the morality. No, it is the same government in the Middle East today produces the same genocidal policies. It didn't turn, it doesn't take form of genocide any second, but the structure is there. So this is another important fact. So in order to create your truth, so I mentioned you truth and denial as not opposite from each other. Denial has its own truth. How do you create your own truth? This is how we do also as scholars. The moment of fact creation. So you have to create the documents. Second, you have to create archive based on the document. And this third step, based on your archival material that you created, you start telling the story. And then, fourth step, it is the national history of Turkey. But I add a fifth factor also here, it's important. If some original documents pops up, then you have to find a moment destroying or proving the falsity of these documents. I'll give you examples for all these. Let me start with an example. How you destroy, how you create documents. What you see here, it is not on there, you cannot see, there is a, it is there. First, you create really documents related. You have here, I'm so sorry, there is a discrepancy between what we have there. Oops, yeah. This April 24, Ottoman authorities arrested around 200 intellectuals. They were brought to two different prisons close to Ankara. One is Çankırı and the other is Ayaş. And they were taken out of these prisons throughout the summer months, 3 or 5 in group, and they were killed. This is what we believe. Archival material shows just the opposite. You saw here a document from Ottoman archive produced 1916. It says the Daşnak leader Agnuni and some other leaders, they were actually taken out of prison, and on their way they escaped to Russia. It's an official document. Another official document for you is the Krikor Zohrab. You may all know the example of Krikor Zohrab. Krikor Zohrab was a very close friend of Talat, and he wasn't not arrested April 24. He was arrested June 1915, and you all believe that he was killed by Union and Progress Party. This is the doctor attest. 1915 summer. Doctor says he passed away because of an heart failure. You think that the government asked a doctor and create this document. You are wrong. Here, it is the testimony of priest from Urfa, because he was killed originally very close to Urfa, and Armenian priest write a testimony saying that I came to the place, I saw the Kirkor, and he passed away because of an heart attack, and here is my testimony. And also the entire newspapers of the period full of coverages about Krikor Zohrab's death, that he passed away because of an heart attack. And daily newspaper covered, and government wrote an official letter to Krikor Zohrab's wife and informing the wife about this accident. You know, we learned coincidentally that Zohrab was actually killed by a Teşkilat-ı Mahsusa member by crashing his hand with a stone. And if we couldn't learn this coincidentally, here enough archival materials for you that clearly shows that Zohrab passed away because of a heart attack. This is how it works. And recently, a Turkish scholar wrote an extensive article on the Armenian intellectual, and based on Ottoman materials, he proved the factual truth that none of these Armenian intellectuals were killed. And these documents, 150 or maybe 200 documents, they weren't produced later. They were produced during the genocidal activities itself. And according to these Ottoman materials, all these intellectuals were taken to court. Some of them got light sentences and some of them were released. This is how denialism actually works. And another important issue I told you, if there are, I will jump to this book. If it emerge some documents, then you have to prove that these documents are forgeries. And they actually not real. An Armenian intellectual, Aram Andonian, published a book in 1921 in Armenian language. He met an Ottoman bureaucrat in Aleppo. The guy, the Naim Efendi, was working in the deportation office in Aleppo. And he sold Andonian around 52 original documents. Andonian published all these in 1921 in Armenian language, saying that these are authentic, original documents and prove the genocidal intent of Ottoman authorities. Indeed, in that book, Aram Andonian showed that there were really killing orders. This is one of the killing orders that Andonian published in his book. It says, this is from Talat Pasha, it says, government had decided to completely annihilate all Armenians. As you see, this is the original Ottoman document with 3-letter Ottoman coding telegrams, and you cannot deny the authenticity. And there is another document. Even Talat orders destroy the children, kill the children. And this is... So then Turkish authorities in 1980 published a book. They claimed, number one, an Ottoman bureaucrat by the name Naim Efendi never existed. You cannot, they said, a memoir for someone who didn't exist. And then the telegram that I showed you, they claimed they were fabricated, faked. All these faked by Aram Andonian. And they had really 12 different reasons why these telegrams were fake. Because of these reasons, nobody translated this book into English language. Just 2 weeks ago, the book is published, editing by myself, and now available in English language. Because why nobody translated? Because even scholars like Richard Hovhannisyan, Vahakn Dadrian, they never used Armandonians and Naim Efendi materials because it was really hard to prove the otherwise. And it was very difficult for them to prove the authenticity of Andonian's documents. And only later I was able to find really the Naim Efendi's existence. Coincidentally, in 2015, I found in Grigor Gergerian's archive indeed Naim Efendi's handwritten notes. It was not available. So the Turkish argument, when they published their books in 1980, they said, if there is Naim and if there exists its memoir, show us. Nobody could show these memoirs of Naim Efendi. It was a total coincidence that I discovered this in Grigor Gergerian archive in 2015. And then I was also able to show really in Turkish archive that the telegrams that you see here, I'm jumping, I'm sorry about it. The telegrams that you see here, they were original telegrams and used by Ottoman government. We can discuss this in question and answer period maybe, because one of the central arguments that made, Ottoman government never used 3-digit Arabic coding system. And we were not able to get access to Turkish archive and we couldn't prove. Somehow, Turkish authorities forgot all these debates about Armandonian and they put so many documents in Ottoman archive with 3-digit Arabic coding system telegrams, 4-digit, 5-digit telegrams. And I was able to work in the archive and to prove the authenticity of these documents. And because of that reason, New York Times 2017 published an article about me saying that Sherlock Holmes of Armenian genocide, because I was able to show that these 3-digit Ottoman documents that Andonian published in his book, indeed available original documents, we can find similar documents in the Ottoman archive. So my last word to you is denialism is a complicated thing. It is not only deny the factual thing, it creates its own facts, its own truth. And denying by what happened in 1915, Turkish government is not only denying what happened in the past. They actually reproduce the institutions, the social relations, the mindset that creates the events of 1915 at the first place. Denial is not simply a defense of an old regime, Ottoman Empire. Denial also fuels the political continuing aggression both inside and outside of Turkey. So, recognition of the Armenian genocide is not a thing of the past that can be forgotten or not forgotten. When confronted with the seemingly more pressing issues of today, on the contrary, it is the key to solving contemporary security problems and contemporary political problems. So Turkey's relation with Azerbaijan, Turkey's relation with Armenia, with Syria, cannot be understood without Turkey's denial of 1915 genocide. So for that reason, struggle against genocide denialism in Turkey is not only a struggle for justice for Armenian people, but also a central component of the political struggle for a greater democracy in Turkey and peaceful coexistence in Turkey, without or in the Middle East. So the peace and peaceful coexistence in the region can only be established if you fight denialism in Turkey. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, and thank you again, Dr. Akçam, for the insights. They empower us, they arm us with information that will help us continue forward. Thank you so much. We will now have our Q&A, question and answer, starting with 3 questions prepared by the youth of our ACYO, and then general questions from the community. Armin, if you can set up the microphone on the side aisle here. And those of you who are wishing to ask a question, please get in line on the microphone here. If you are unable physically to join the line, please let us know and we will get a microphone to you as quickly as we can. In the interest of time, we do need to keep this moving, so please, no long statements, just your question, please, so that Dr. Akçam has more time to answer more questions from you, the audience. So we will begin with the 3 questions from the ACYO, Armenian Christian Youth Organization, and then on to the community questions. Thank you.
Dr. Akçam, as a Turkish scholar who has dedicated your career to researching and speaking the truth about the Armenian genocide, what personal sacrifices and challenges have you faced, and what continues to drive you forward?
Thank you so much for the question. I think there is a kind of a misperception here in America, and it was the case in Europe when it comes to Armenian genocide. I mean, talking about truth in Turkey. Mostly you think that it is very dangerous to talk about Armenian genocide in Turkey, or it was dangerous in the past to talk about Armenian genocide. Actually, it doesn't reflect the whole truth. The basic problem in Turkey related to Armenian genocide was a psychological one. In 1990s, early 2000, it was very difficult to talk about Kurds. If you talk about existence of Kurds in Turkey, you could have put in prison because there were laws against existence of Kurds. There was no law about Armenian genocide. They created later. The problem with Armenian genocide was the psychological burden. It was the psychological pressure. Nobody dared to talk about it. And when you talk, you could have taken out of the society. Even your friends start not talking to you. This was the first thing that I experienced. But there were no legal mechanism against you. They started, imagine Agos newspaper, published first 1995. And first book published on Armenian genocide, 1991, 1992. All the ways around 2005, 2006, there were no legal measures against those who spoke openly about Armenian genocide. It started a problem afterwards. The government, I told you, denialism is a structure. As soon as they noticed that they don't have any legal mechanism to fight the Armenian genocide claims, they did 2 things. Number one, they reactivate an old law which was not much in use. This was infamous 301 article and insulting Turkishness. And secondly, they organized right-wing extremists as a civil society organizations, organizing campaigns against those individuals, Hrant Dink, Orhan Pamuk, Taner Akçam, and so on and so forth. And then the assassination of Hrant Dink appeared after that. So I want to make a distinction between psychological problem, this difficulty of terms, acknowledging the Armenian genocide, not because of the legal restriction in country, because it was something that went against their identity. It was a very tough question. You know, when you speak about Kurds, you could be put in jail. But when you speak about Armenian genocide, then you have to accept, acknowledge, not only the Armenian genocide as a fact, but you have to acknowledge that your founding fathers, an important number of them, they were either murderers or thieves. Isn't it difficult? I mean, you don't need a law for it. To talk about the misdeed of founding fathers, that they were involved. I mean, every nation has the founding fathers that they're proud of. And when you start talking it, it goes really bones of your identity. Then you have to question your own Turkishness. So the sacrifice was first to be ready to be isolated from your own people, from your own group, and then, of course, physical attacks of Turkish authorities. And it is not a coincidence when they started physically attacked us, dragged us from courtroom to courtroom. The first victim that we had was an Armenian. They could have put the Orhan Pamuk number 1 and Hrant Dink number 10. No, they put Hrant Dink number 1, and I was in outside Orhan Pamuk number 3 and Taner Akçam number 2, Orhan Pamuk number 3, Taner Akçam. How we know that? Because of some political conflict in Turkey, Turkish police raid some of the archives on extreme nationalist group, and they discovered a really list of those who must be assassinated, and Hrant Dink was number 1, Orhan Pamuk number 2. We know they already had 2 assassination attempts, failed assassination attempt in Turkey against Hrant Dink, and I received enough death threats and so on and so forth. So among my generation, I was the luckiest because I used to live here in the United States. One more thing is important. If I were not an outspoken individual regarding the Kurdish issue in Turkey, I was put in prison because of that. I was tortured in Turkey. I didn't know even 1970s that Armenians are living in Turkey. Only because of these things that I was able to face in 1970s, I was able to talk about Armenian genocide. You know, in the United States, I was physically attacked when I was giving lectures. I was really under American police protected me. But this was for me, believe me, a cage. In America, couple thugs are going to attack me, idiot students. I don't give a damn, I'm sorry for the expression, damn shit to them. Because I already know the difficulties that we faced. You know, in 1975, when we used to go to our universities, we were not sure whether we could survive the day. I lost my friends next to me. They shot us. Extreme right-wing nationalists organized by Turkish government, they were shooting the students. Every day it was a common thing to lose 3 or 4 students. You know, when I was in prison, we used to talk with each other, the prisoners, how long we are going to live. I was 22. My dream was to live until 27. I thought if I could survive until 27, this would have been a great life. So when we talk about Armenian genocide, please don't never forget those progressive in Turkey. They might not enough talking about Armenian genocide. You are right on that issue. But believe me, their fight in case of Kurdish question made also possible and easy to talk on Armenian genocide. So never forget the interconnectedness between democratization in Turkey and talking openly about Armenian genocide. It was a long answer, but I'm so sorry I had to talk this. Thank you.
Dr. Akçam, drawing from your experience as both a scholar and a Turkish citizen, how do you believe Turkish youth can be guided towards an honest and informed understanding of the Armenian genocide? And what role does education play in building that path to the truth?
Education is essential, very important. But in Turkey, in order to have a good education, you have to change the education system. The basic takeout from my talk should be Turkey is an apartheid regime, or denialism only can compare with apartheid regime. Then my question to you, how the South African apartheid regime had changed, how it was toppled. Two important things, domestic opposition and pressure from outside. This is what we are missing in Armenian case. This is always what Hrant Dink used to say all the time. You know, genocide happened on the ground in Anatolia, on that land, and denialism will end on that land. There is no other way. So this means we have to find a way, a combination, a cooperation between pressure from outside and with then domestic opposition in Turkey. If we cannot get this corroboration, we cannot change the denialist regime. Because Turkey is powerful, as you know. There's a lot of leverage in its hand. Nobody would create a blockade or really strong economic embargo against Turkey to acknowledge the Armenian genocide. So you can only have the chance to get connected with the domestic opposition, and Turkey's democratization is the entrance ticket to get Armenian genocide recognized. And of course, as scholar, it's our job to produce book and to give more really content to how genocide occurred. But never forget, genocide and denialism can only be fought in political sphere. It is a fight in politique. So we should not hide, for example, being an academic and so on. This is a political fight. Like today, what's going on in the United States. Either you take this fight or you give up. I mean, now because of all these Gaza and developments, now in the United States also they started restricting the freedom of speech on campuses and so on and so forth. And my only answer is this is a deja vu for us. Those who deals with Armenian genocide, we know all this. They will start in early 2000. They started after we started being outspoken on Armenian genocide. Then they restricted the freedom of speech. There is a law now. There is a court decision. It says talking about genocide is not protected speech. It's a law. Welcome to the United States. So this is the reason that I say it's a deja vu for us, actually. Yeah.
In your research and book, Killing Orders, what piece of historical evidence do you feel is most undeniable? And do you believe Turkey will ever formally recognize the Armenian genocide in our lifetime?
As I said, I already answered, you cannot convince Tayyip Erdogan with documents that genocide occurred. We had a conference and on the denialism, and I told to my American friends, we were debating what the future of genocide studies after Gaza, and I told them, denialism is the ability, the capacity of taking a rabbit out of hat. Each time when you defeat their one argument, they took another rabbit out of hat. There is no end for it. Killing order is or the Armandonion's book now, you have to read in combination with killing order, with my foreword that I wrote for Armandonion's book, is a definitive documentation of Armenian genocide. What we discovered is very simple. Number one, Naim Efendi exists, we found in archive documents. We have his handwritten memoir. They were denying all these, they are fact. What about the telegrams? We discovered in Ottoman archive several original documents similar with those telegrams that Aram Andonion published in his book. Definitive proof of genocidal intent of Ottoman government. What is the Turkish government reaction? They didn't care because their beginning point is not the documentation. Denialism, again, is a structure, is a mindset, and it starts considering others as a threat to national security. If you start thinking Armenian demands for social justice and equality is a threat to national security, there will come that you have to commit the genocide. In history, Armenians were asking only two things. They want to be equal citizen. Very simple, nothing much. Equal citizen, equal rights. And second, social reforms, land reforms. Those tribes, Kurdish, Turkish, Circassian tribes, state, were forcibly confiscating Armenian properties. Peasants, they were suffering all kinds of pressures. And Armenians' demand can be summarized with two things. Equal citizen, our testimonies should be equal in front of court as a Muslim, like a Muslim, and we want our confiscated land back. Nothing else. What was the Ottoman government's reaction? It's a threat to national security. They want to create a separate, independent state. So they react, and this is the really one letter to the others. It's really accelerated over the year, and during the war year it ends with genocide. It is like the Palestinians. They are not equal citizens. Their demand also considered as a national security threat to existence of a state. So, if you cannot change this mindset, you have always a problem, because if a nation state considers an ethnic, religious, cultural group that is different than the dominant group that established a state, then we have a problem. This is the problem in Turkey. And based on this, they considered Christians, Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians, and the Kurds, not an equal citizens. They don't have equal right in Turkey like the Turks have. And they Turkish government considers Kurdish demand for equality and social reform as a security threat. So it is mainly a problem of really political fight, and we should really not think that by proving new document, bringing up new document, we can fight the denialism. It helps, of course. Killing Orders, Aramandonion's book helps a lot. It really shuts up certain arguments that they have, but they will pull out another rabbit from their hat. So it's a political struggle, unfortunately.
Dr. Ashkam, I have two questions for you. First being, since you have mentioned, and your work mentions, emphasizes that the CUP had a singular vision for a pure Turkish state. Firstly, do you think as an academic yourself, for academic purposes, we can frame the violence against Greeks, Assyrians, and Armenians not as separate events, but as a policy of systematic ethnic cleansing of non-Turkish citizens? And second, if there's a scope for building a multi-ethnic lobby for the same?
I don't understand,
the question.
unfortunately.
I'm sorry. Good. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Ashkam, my question to you was, your work emphasizes that the CUP had a singular vision for a pure Turkish state. So my first question to you is, as an academic, do you think, for academic purposes, we can frame the violence against Greeks, Assyrians, and Armenians not as separate events, but as a policy of systematic ethnic cleansing of non-Turkish citizens? And second, if there's a scope for building a multi-ethnic lobby for the same?
Hardly I understand, not because of you, because of me. I have hearing aids, and if you can repeat.
The first question, if I understand it, Jay, is that can you frame the violence against Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians not just as separate incidents, but as a complete policy? That was the first question, and then you had your second.
Thank you so much. Now I'm announcing first time, 2027 January, I hope, if everything works out good, you will have a new book of mine. It is the title is Empire of Violence and a New History of Armenian Genocide. In that book, I am introducing a new way to explain the Armenian genocide, not as a single event between 1915-18, but an event of continuum beginning 1878. What is 1878? Berlin Congress and the Article 61, all the way 1923. Then genocide as a process, not a single event, and targeted not only the Armenians, but also Assyrians, Greeks, and Armenians, of course. So it is indeed our scholarship later separated extermination of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks. It was happening at the same time during those years. Ottoman government didn't make much any distinction between them. But we historians and the people of those groups, Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks, they only concentrated of what happened to their own nation. And we scholar Armenian genocide, Assyrian genocide, and then the Greek genocide. Totally different from each other. So the term that we use now, Ottoman genocide, it is a genocide that incorporates all these three groups. One important reason why we don't combine all these, because of a problem, I cannot discuss these at length, the term genocide. The term genocide brought us a problem. The problem is to prove what happened to us should fit the definition of 1948. And it creates an unnecessary, a stupid debate between Greeks and Armenians and Assyrians. And then they started, what happened to us is according to the 48 definition genocide, but what happened to Greeks, it doesn't fit the definition because you Greeks, 1913, 14, yeah, there were a couple massacres here and there maybe, but you were put on the ships and sent to Greece. It's true. I mean, in 1913, 14, it happened in that way. So because of this harsh-spelting terminological debate, we totally ignored that it was the Ottoman government that were deporting, expelling, or killing, or doing all these things at the same time to these three ethnic groups. Not only to these three. They started, beginning of 1921, doing the same thing to the Kurds. Have you ever included the Kurds? I don't know whether there are Greek friends among you. 1921-22, there is Pontus genocide. And if you look the Greek literature, you can't find one single word, even let alone the sentence, that exact during same months when the Greeks were exterminated. It was the Koçgiri Kurds. They were also exterminated. Same days. Read the Kurdish literature on Koçgiri, 1920-21. You can hardly find one word or sentence that the Greeks were exterminated during same period. Because we are so strict on our origin or our ethnic group. And because of the term genocide, Koçgiri, you cannot count this genocide and so on. So this understanding must really change. It is the Ottoman government targeted all these groups without any distinction, and it was generally what they implemented was mass atrocities. It was mass violence in different forms, and we should really consider all as one process.
Thank you, Dr. Akçam. His second question was that do you think there's a scope or a pathway towards a multi-ethnic lobby of these groups to push their agenda, or do you think the challenges you just mentioned would get in the way of that?
Of course. There are attempts now, but still there is a saying I learned when I was a very strong leftist from a Chinese, I think it's from Mao Zedong or somebody else. In old days, everybody sings on its mountains its own song. So nobody listens to the others. So this is what is going on today mostly. And I wish those who are fighting for justice, those who are fighting for democracy, human rights, and peaceful coexistence in the region, in the Middle East, Palestinian, Jews, Kurds, Arabs, Assyrians, Greeks, that they all come together and develop a new language, a new path to create a new understanding where it is possible that every group find itself and there is a genuine conversation about all these for peaceful coexistence, human rights and democracy in the region. Yes, this is what we need. Thank you.
Final question. Please go ahead on the microphone.
Dr. Akin, are you familiar with Jacob Kuzler? He lived with the Armenians for 23 years, 1899, 1922. Witness how they were treated between 1895 and 1923.
Jacob Musler?
Jacob Kuzler.
Kuzler.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Jacob Kuzler?
Of course.
Yes.
You are?
This was a German missionary.
He was a missionary.
In Diyarbakir opened and Urfa opened hospitals and the orphanages for the Armenian children.
He delivered 8,000 Armenian orphans from Turkey to Syria.
And there is a book written on his legacy.
Yes, it's called The Land of the Promise. No,
Yes.
sorry. I have it there, but I don't have it with me.
Jakob Künstler is very well known missionary in the history, and we are thankful not only Jakob Künstler but all other missionaries, American missionaries, Swiss missionaries, European missionaries, that they were first-hand really witnessing of the genocidal process, and they report all these really in a very good way to their own governments. And in early period, when the Ottoman archives were not available for the scholars, we mostly, early scholarship used extensively the missionary reports, yes.
Thank you so much for your questions, and thank you for your insightful answers, Dr. Akçam. But you can't sit down yet. I invite our event co-chairs, Haigan and Sarah, and Dr. Edward Adurian, if he's available, to present you with a special gift on behalf of the Commemoration Committee, created and donated generously by the San Diego-based Armenian artist Tanya Atayan Nave, who is also here today with her family.
Oh, I thank you. Oh, wonderful.
Tanya has designed a stunning art piece inspired by the forget-me-not flower, symbolizing the Armenian genocide, spirit of survival and remembrance. Thank you, Tanya. If you would like to also come up for a picture with them, with the artist. Thank you for this beautiful work.
Oh, it's really beautiful. No, I mean, it's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Haigan and Sarah, don't sit down yet. Thank you, Dr. Akçam. You can finally relax for a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I'll take my computer.
I also want to thank Haigan and Sarah for co-chairing our commemoration committee with such dedication and devotion. Thank you both so much. For our final musical performance, Alex Simonian on duduk, Anthony Garunian on organ now, Father Pakrad Berjekian on vocals, to perform the beloved Armenian national song, Giligya.
It's good that I came with car, so I can take it via.
Երբոր բացվի ընտրնեն ուսո և մեր երկրեմ պախտացը մեր չկնա երգիր մեր արմենյո և պայլեյու քաղցրի Ձարնիր պույն թարնա, երբ որ ձարեր հակնին դերև, ցանգահամ դեսնել զիմգիլիկյա աշխարը որ ինձ եդուր արև ցանգահամ դեսնել զիմգիլիկյա աշխարը որ ինձ եդուր Mergenats մեջ ուրամենայն իղծկավարդի հասակը ուր հոգինի դենչի շադագած յուր գարոդին հոր ժամը կնարնիմ ծրդանա սիրույն դալով վերջին փահարև երթամնն չել հիմ գիլիկյա աշխարհ որինց եդուր արև երթամնն չել հիմ գիլիկյա աշխարհ որինց եդուր
Thank you for that beautiful performance. And Father Pakrad, your closing words before we proceed outside. Father Pakrad, Berjekian.
Dear friends, clergy, distinguished guests, fellow Armenians, never had any problem with this before. 111 years before, 111 years have passed since our people walked into the desert. They were stripped of their homes, their churches, their children, their names. The architects of that crime believed that within a generation, the Armenian people would be a memory. And they were wrong. We are here. We have resurrected by the grace of God, through the blood of our martyrs, and through the unbreakable will of a people who refused to die. Our sacrifice did not go in vain. We have a homeland, small, perhaps, scarred, certainly, but real. Ours, a homeland where the Armenian language is spoken under an Armenian sky, where Armenian churches still ring their bells, where Armenian children grow up knowing who they are. But today reminds us that homeland alone is not enough. What keeps a people alive across generations is not only soil, it is memory. It is this gathering. It is the music of Gomidas rising in this holy place. It is Duduk's cry that carries within it everything words cannot explain, cannot say. It is our children standing here, learning the names of all those names who came before them. The torch of our martyrs will not go out, not as long as we pass it hand to hand, generation to generation, heart to heart. May the memory of the holy martyrs forever inspire us. May their witness strengthen our faith, and may we remain steadfast, faithful to truth, to justice, and to eternal light that no darkness can overcome. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Harsorp. Thank you, Father Pakrad, for your words. And if you go back to the recording on YouTube, his sermon this morning about the Armenian genocide and tying it to the Bible was remarkable. And so were your words today. Thank you, Harsorp. And thanks to all who participated in today's program and to all of our Armenian organizations who co-sponsored the event. And of course, to Dr. Akjam for your remarkable presentation. And to all of you for coming. We will now proceed outside to the Armenian Genocide Monument after the flags and leadership proceed out first. The ACYO will be handing out carnations by the front door for you to lay at the foot of the monument outside. David Ojakian of the Armenian Assembly will share advocacy updates from Capitol Hill, and then Father Pakrad will say a closing prayer for the martyred saints of the Armenian genocide. Please remain quiet while the flags depart the room, and then you may follow to the Genocide Monument. We appreciate your support in all its forms. Thank you all again for coming, and please proceed now to the monument.